on this computer. Now it's recording on my computer, and at the very end it'll download, and then I get the file. Like this was our meeting from yesterday. Is like saved right here. That's our meeting from yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so make sure it's recording. No big deal if it isn't. If it isn't, we don't have a recording or whatever.
Yeah. I just
if there's a PowerPoint, make sure we do a screen share. That'll screen share to people who are participating.
Okay.
And then make sure, it's facing the speaker so that the people can see the speaker. And then when people come on, I set this up so that it automatically mutes people. But like, you need to tell the speaker, like, if for some reason someone decides to like unmute themselves, they have control over this because this is like the admin page. So you could literally just mute people. And hopefully people won't be disruptive.
Okay. Why would you unmute yourself?
I don't know. But if someone felt like they wanted to mute themselves,
okay, where's the mute thing though?
It's okay. So you know how you end up in the little boxes. It'll say mute, and you click. Okay. You can click mute, but I set it up so that when people join, they're automatically muted.
Okay, great.
So that shouldn't be a problem.
No. I was just gonna say, like for the 11 o'clock thing, she doesn't have anything. She just needs the mic to be on the table stand.
Okay, and this has to be too, because this is how people are going to see her and hear her.
Yeah, so that...
Why is this not... Oh my god. Why is this not charging?
The next one.
I need this to be charging, because I'm at 75%.
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't do Zoom for the first one, sorry, but we're on Zoom.
Try now.
Okay, perfect. Is it charging?
No, it's not, but I also need to move it.
So is it on? Because then I'll have people test it out now. That way we can kind of troubleshoot before.
Yeah, can you please go on it now? I'm on it.
Oh, sure.
And I just put it on our Facebook page. So if you want to click, it's on the Facebook page.
And then the microphone can go wherever we need it. So should I just, let me ask.
Maria? Maria, so you don't mind if you're being recorded, right? Because some people are going to do virtual. So basically, this is facing you. Just make sure you're in the shot here. And then like Kristen, she's in the room right now. She's just testing it. So people are going to be like popping up. If by NH, like look, like she should be muted. I don't know why she's not.
Oh my God, so this is how people watch us remotely?
Yeah. It's not going to be many. It's just going to be a bunch of CNLD leaders who couldn't make it.
I'm just naturally nervous, that's all.
Oh, that's okay. And then if people should be muted, if they're not muted and they start talking, that's not going to happen, hopefully. But if it does, call me over here, or you can just mute them.
So you know how many people are watching?
Yeah, you'll see. Right now it's just one person. But there'll probably be a few more coming on.
Okay, I'm not going to be nervous.
No, don't be nervous. You're going to be great. You don't have to touch this or anything. Just look out into the audience and
just mind my own business.
Yeah.
Okay, microphone.
This is not even here.
Testing. It's not on.
It's not on. You just, when you're ready, you just flip it on like that.
Okay, well, just give me a cue when I start, and
we're gonna introduce you. So that's when you will start.
Yeah, Monica. What's Monica, right? Yeah, she asked
Monica's going to introduce you.
Yeah, she said, "I'm going to introduce you to her." I said, "Do whatever you want, just." So yeah, be comfortable. I'm
She's
super
so
down to earth.
Yeah,
no worries.
I get that from you. That's cool. Can you get a selfie?
Yeah, heck yeah.
If I could find my phone. You know what? You're friends with Angel, right?
Yes, he's supposed to be watching.
No, he's not supposed to be watching. He's supposed to be here.
I know.
I was texting with him.
I talked to him last night, so he better be watching.
I'm like, whatever. I know, he just texted me right now. It's not you.
Ya la-
Ya,
ya va a salir.
Thank you.
De que la gente va a empezar a comer. Pero
All right, I'm gonna text Angel and tell him that you're live and ready to.
Yeah, tell him
him
that
to
he's
come on.
going to be watching.
Yes.
Aquí para... ¿Dónde te vas a poner tú, Alexis?
Yes.
No, ¿dónde vas a poner la computadora?
Ah,
No sé,
okay.
no, no sé. No, pues sí.
Creo que es María Palacios.
Sí, pero hasta ahorita tengo que poner una computadora al lado de ella.
I think it's just me.
Yeah. Oh, they're not going to put a computer with the Zoom thing? No, okay.
The what?
With the I thought they were... Anyway. I thought
They
were
have a
gonna do
computer
the
in front of me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's
So
set up.
the water is for Maria.
Okay.
Yeah. So we got you water.
Oh, thank you. You're the best. How do I look on the big screen? Good.
¿Cómo dijiste que eras?
Goddess on wheels.
Goddess on wheels.
Son las 10:55. Abre una barra.
I'm gonna do something on here. Okay. ¿Qué pasa?
You live in Chicago?
Yeah, but I'm trying to get out. Actually, this week, 2 days ago, I had an interview in LA.
Really?
And I'm going to find out next week if I get it or not.
Oh my gosh.
So please pray for me.
I
Pray to
will.
the goddesses or whatever you do.
Windy City.
I know, because I'm an LA girl, okay? And I've been in
Really?
Chicago for too many years. Like, I love
You're
Chicago.
ready to
It's
get
just
out
too
of there.
cold.
Yeah, it is.
It's too cold. So I interviewed in LA, and hopefully I get that job.
I hope you do get it. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. So
Kat, are you going to stay sitting here with Maria?
no, I'm not. Did you want me to?
No, I was just curious.
Oh.
I
I was just putting something on Twitter really quick.
I also don't know where to go myself, so.
I need to be able to forget about this computer in front of me.
Yeah, it's not there. No te preocupes.
It's not there. It's not there.
No. Why don't you just stand at the podium, Monica?
For the entire speech? No.
Oh,
Yeah, for the intro, yes.
and then go sit on this one.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I'm not standing for 45 minutes. Heck no.
Or you could sit at the table, whatever.
No, I'll just like sit in one of the tables. Hey,
It's off.
hey, people can start going back to their seats. We're gonna start in like 5 minutes. Thanks.
So are people watching already or not yet?
I have no idea. I have decided to not worry about that.
Okay, me too.
I'm not in charge of the Zoom.
That's
I have no
good.
idea what.
I'm not either. And if people are watching, hi.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. How many people do you think there are?
I don't know, maybe 100.
Really? I guess not being able to see them is good. Makes me less nervous.
I forgot that what you asked me.
Oh.
I just love cross-disability friendships. We forget. What does it sound like to you?
I don't know. Like, I just can't tell if all of the tables are full.
I think that not all the tables are full. That's why some tables are full and others have like 3 people. Others, you know.
Because we're supposed, like, the tables are set up for 70.
Really?
Yeah, it's like, I think there's,
I was rounding it off, so there probably might be like 70 or 80. Yeah.
yeah, so there's 7 chairs per table, and there's 10 tables.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Okay, we're gonna get started in like 1 minute. 1 minute, people. Pero luego va a ser difícil ponerlo.
Yeah, you got it. I will just put it back. There you go. Oh my God, okay, I'm officially nervous. I'm officially nervous.
That's gonna be good. You're a goddess.
That's right.
You're a goddess.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're gonna get started with our keynote. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed your break. Our keynote speaker has told me to address her as Goddess on Wheels. So I want to introduce you to Maria Palacios, who's a Texan and a writer, activist, poet, and just all the wonderfulness. And so she'll take it up from here, and she'll be she's gonna speak all the way up till lunch. So thank you so much for coming all the way from Houston.
Thank you. Wow, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Oops, it's off. You turned it off. Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you especially for being part of this moment in which we come together to share our vision of collective liberation. As we knock down the pillars of oppression that have for so long imprisoned us as a community, we come together in the name of empowerment, knowing that we are capable of making a difference just by existing and being who we are. But we cannot speak of collective liberation without first recognizing the individual components of what makes us whole. Wholeness is as much about individuality as it is about the whole picture. The oneness of us is always part of a larger picture. We are always part of a larger movement. When thinking about the pillars of oppression, we must recognize the wars we have been forced to fight with ourselves, with our own bodies. When thinking about pillars of oppression, we must think beyond architectural barriers and recognize that just because some of us are liberated, it doesn't mean all of us are liberated. Our brothers and sisters all over the world, our brothers and sisters with disabilities are still oppressed, and therefore so are we. When thinking about pillars of oppression, let's for a second think about the disability rights movement and how every single movement has managed to forget us. Every single movement through our history, in the end, forgets people with disabilities, even amongst each other. One of the complaints that I hear to this day about the disability rights movement is that it was, number one, white male-led, and that it focused pretty much strictly on architectural barriers. And then once we got our ramps and once we got those architectural barriers and we took care of that issue, then the advocacy did not continue including other disabled people, did not continue including the needs of other disabilities. So it was not about all of us. It was just about one specific group, you know? So when we think about collective liberation, we have to move together. Collective liberation is about our wholeness without forgetting our oneness, and it's about our oneness without forgetting our wholeness, if that makes any sense at all, which of course it does. So when we begin to envision the ways in which we can grow toward collective liberation, we must take baby steps. We really must take baby steps because Rome, my loves, was not built in one day, and neither was any movement. And while I know that many of us have been fighting all our lives for change to make a difference, we're still fighting, we're still here. We cannot forget that the mission continues, that we are still doing what we are doing, that we are moving forward, that the baby steps that we take must be shared. We have to keep doing what we're doing because that's what collective liberation is about. We cannot do this alone. And so as I was thinking about my presentation today, as I was thinking about how do I share my personal experience as an activist, as an advocate, as a disabled woman of color, as a Latina, as a queer, brown, Latina, should I go on? You know, as I was thinking about that, I wanted to leave you with something that you would remember, because I could sit here and talk all day, but unless I present you with my personal baby steps, chances are that you will only remember part of what I said. And that's just the nature of the beast, right? You get bombarded with so much information all the time, especially when you're an activist, when you're an advocate. You're always in many directions, looking in every way, finding ways to find yourself, to deliver your message. So my message to you today is in my own personal baby steps. And I have put together what I call the ABCs of collective liberation. I mean, who doesn't know the ABCs, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So I have put together the ABCs of collective liberation. And from A to Z, I am going to share my personal view, my personal experience of what this means, of how my experience with my exposure to the pillars of oppression has led me to this moment with you, to this moment of sharing what I have personally done with the help of my community and what we need to continue doing as a community as a whole. So beginning with A is for awareness. We have to have awareness of the struggle, awareness of our privilege, and awareness of our role in the larger picture, which is represented today as this mural of activism we are painting together. As we move together through the alphabet of collective liberation, we must recognize ourselves as part of this mutual awareness. Awareness of our own existence, awareness of our positive identity as disabled people. Awareness of our own existence and our own awareness. Awareness of our own bodies, our own physical representation of life in this universe where we all exist, sometimes so unaware of each other. However, one of the things that I love about our culture is that that's the one thing that we do know, is that we do know our neighbors. We do know the people, you know, being Latina, being Latins, coming from where we come, and from Latin America, from wherever we identify as being Latinos or Latinas, the one thing that we keep as part of our roots is knowing our neighbors. One of the things that shocked me as an immigrant when I came to this country, gosh, forever ago, but I was 15 years old, and one of the things that shocked me the most was how nobody knew their neighbors. You know, and it came to the moment when I would go outside to go to school as a 15-year-old kid, and I would notice how isolated our communities tend to be, or at least it felt to me that way, having come from a society that you can borrow a cup of sugar from your neighbor, where you know who the name of your neighbor's dogs, for crying out loud. So I have made it my personal business to know my neighbors, to know the people that surround me, to know who can be my ally. Because like it was said before, we need allies in the movement. So awareness is really important. We have to be aware of each other. We have to be aware of our surroundings. Aware of the fact that we are not alone. We are in this together because we bring down the pillars of oppression. We find ourselves free and able to find one another and identify the struggle and the pain we share, but also the power and beauty which we are to see when we become aware of one another, and without the chains and without the labels that have for so long kept us imprisoned and oppressed and afraid. When we become aware of one another, we learn, we liberate each other, we become stronger just by having awareness of ourselves, of our strengths, and of each other. So never forget that awareness is the very beginning towards knocking down those pillars of oppression and painting our mural of collective liberation. That's how we begin. So take a moment in your daily lives to become aware of your surroundings, to become aware of who your neighbors are. You know, chances are that we become so Americanized that we tend to forget where we come from as far as the cultural strengths that we bring from our roots. We have to learn in our personal awareness to become aware of the things that we want to keep from our culture, the things that we want to pass on to the next generation of disabled activists, the things that we must teach because it's our responsibility to do so. So please, let's all be aware of one another, aware of our strengths, aware of who we are. That was A. A is for awareness. I don't mean to sound like a teacher, do I? Nothing wrong with being a teacher. B, building new models of inclusion. We cannot keep moving forward unless we do so together. Inclusion is not a dirty word. Inclusion is not a scary word, but we have made it so. We have made it so by dividing each other rather than uniting. When we build new models of inclusion, we must remember that we do not stop advocating just because the needs of a specific group were met. You know, and we already kind of talked about that. When building models of inclusion, we must stop separating one another. We must stop labeling each other. We must learn from each other. We must teach each other what we learn along the way. We cannot exclude each other from the struggle. You know, when I talk about unification, when I talk about coming together in the name of advocacy, in the name of empowerment, in the name of culture, we cannot just sit here in our comfortable space of privilege. Yes, I said it, privilege. Because all of us at some point in our lives have had it. No matter how disabled we may be, we all have some level of privilege, and we must acknowledge our privilege in order to make a difference. When we build new models of inclusion, there are certain things that we can do. One of the things that we can do is we have to recognize that we don't have to give financially or physically to contribute. Another thing that we have to do is we have to trust ourselves. Trust ourselves because we have pretty much taught not to do so. Ableism is very real. And ableism pushes us constantly to not trust ourselves, to not trust our own experience, to not trust what we know about our bodies, about our communities, about our own existence. So trusting ourselves is a fundamental part of building new models of inclusion. When building new models of inclusion, we have to think outside the box. And we have to write our own instruction manual because the world will get it wrong. The world will keep doing things for us without asking us what our needs are. Another thing that we can do is not allow others to decide for us. Enough is enough. There are many things that we can do as we move forward. We need more disability-led services. We need our people to be guiding our people. We need to be guiding each other. We need to be teaching each other. We need to be learning from one another, not from the non-disabled world that thinks that knows best about what we need. And also, we need to stop telling each other what we need. We need to start asking what is best for one another. You cannot just assume that inclusion means having ASL interpreters and having Braille stuff and having ramps. No, it doesn't work that way. We have to ask each other, what works for you? Because you know what, I may be in a wheelchair, my friend Renee's in a wheelchair too, but do we have the same needs? No. We might have similar needs and some basic fundamental needs, but our needs will be different. So let's remember, A is for awareness, B is for building new models of inclusion. And when building new models of inclusion, we have to start from scratch. We have to build from the ground up. We have to learn from one another, and we have to stop excluding each other. C. C is for CRIP. CRIP is beautiful. Indeed, baby. CRIP is very beautiful. When bringing down the pillars of oppression, we take back the language that was once used to put us down and turn it into power. CRIP is beautiful. CRIP is the representation of our survival, the short version of the how and why of our advocacy. CRIP is sexy and sassy and fearless. And CRIP from now on means something else. It means C for creativity, R for respect, I for intersectionality, and P for pride. Yeah. So yes, baby, CRIP is beautiful. CRIP is gorgeous. We are beautiful. We are CRIP, and CRIP is power. Never again will the word CRIP be something used to disempower us, to bury our identities, to make us less than. Never again. So remember that. When you hear somebody else, when you hear a CRIP referring to ourselves as CRIPs, it's not a derogatory term. It means power. CRIP is beautiful. Let's own it. D. D is for dismantling structures of oppression. Dismantling structures of oppression. Now, as disabled people, I think that whether we recognize what the structures of oppression are or not, I think that most of us recognize that they exist. And systems of oppression, structures of oppression are simply systems which segregate or imprison. Let's remember that. When we dismantle structures of oppression, we are dismantling systems which segregate or imprison. You know, the thing is that the non-disabled world would probably sit there and hear me say this and go, well, who's trying to imprison you? Seriously? Obviously, these people have never been to a nursing home. Obviously, anybody who doesn't recognize that there are systems which segregate and imprison have never taken a moment to recognize the medicalization of disability. The minute that anybody becomes identified as disabled, acquires a disability, we get medicalized. We get thrown into a bucket of generalizations. We are in danger of becoming institutionalized, forgotten, buried alive in the name of normality. Enough is enough. Systems that segregate or imprison, unaffordable and accessible housing. Who, as with a disability, doesn't live that reality, especially here in Texas? Employment inequality. Must I even insult your intelligence talking about this? No. These are systems that oppress and imprison. If you're unable to make money, if you're unable to find housing, if you're unable to do the things that you need to be liberated, How are you not imprisoned? How are you not oppressed? We are imprisoned and oppressed. Communication barriers, denial of access to mobility aids, income caps that keep you from making extra money, denial of provider care services, marriage inequality, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Because in our fight for equality, as we tear down the pillars of oppression to paint our mural of activism, we must dismantle the structures that keep us imprisoned, the structures that keep us from being able to be part of society. So D is for dismantling structures of oppression. Bit of water. And when we do so, when we dismantle systems of oppression, we do it through advocacy. We vote, we organize, we share, we use technology, we tell our story, we find and create allies, we push for disability-led services, we demand change, we become change, we do our part. You know, I threw the use technology in there because I think that many of us are taking technology for granted. And here we are, how wonderful it is that people are watching us online. How wonderful it is that now when we say the television, the revolution will not be televised, we mean it because it will be experienced live through all the technology that we have. We have the future at our fingertips. We have the ability to share beyond anything that we've been able to do before. When I say let's make disability rights a global movement, I mean it. You know why? Because we're able to do it because of technology. So not for a second think that there's nothing that we can do, because there is. There is. E, express your needs. And I know this may sound like something so basic, but it's not. As disabled people, but especially so as disabled Latins, expressing our needs is something we are going to have to practice all of our lives. And for the rest of our lives, because there are so many layers of cultural oppression that the simple act of saying what we need without guilt is an act of rebellion for many of us. An act of rebellion to say, I need this in order to function. You know, as a disabled person, the things that I'm sharing with you right now, it has taken me years and years and years to learn. And the part about expressing your needs, I learned this recently, perhaps within the last 10 years. And I'm gonna briefly tell you how I learned it. I was in a group of disabled performers in the Bay Area, and we were getting ready to kind of just put together, yes, Sins Invalid, hooray for my brothers and sisters with Sins Invalid. And so we were in a circle, and the director, Patty Byrne, who's such a magnificent leader, she asked all of us that before we get started, why don't we take a few moments to express our needs, to check in. And I was like, oh, well, okay, well, coming from Texas, nobody has ever before a meeting asked me what I need. You know, in any case, I'm asked, what are you giving? You know, because that's the kind of ableist world in which we live. As a disabled person, expressing our needs, it becomes like, oh, our needs become an inconvenience to the non-disabled world. Well, no, my darlings, not anymore. Okay, expressing our needs is our revolutionary self-advocacy. See what I mean? Wow, I'm good. Dang, I'm good. So anyway, I was sitting there in this group of disabled performers, and it just dawned on me how powerful it is to be able to say, hi, my name is Maria, and today I'm in pain, and therefore I need to be sitting and leaning on one side as I speak in order to function. And as a disabled performer, I need a place to chill outside my chair in the green room because I'd be too tired to perform. In other words, all of us have different needs that allow us to function, but none of us as disabled people are taught to express them from a position of power. And if anything, we are taught the opposite. The message that we get is that our needs are an inconvenience, and we are taught to apologize about our needs. Not anymore. Expressing our needs is part of our rights. It's how we let the world know how we are best able to give from the best side of us, from what we have, from our well of wisdom and experience. Expressing our needs is essential to our ability to advocate for our rights and the rights of other people. So E is for express your needs. F is for forgiveness. F is for forgiveness because forgiveness allows us to heal the wounds of our painful history. Yes, Forgive, but don't forget. And by don't forget, I don't mean hold grudges or seek revenge. I mean, find a way to learn from it. Find a way to use the painful lessons to do something for others. We have a lot to forgive. Forgive our past. Forgive the ancestors. Forgive our culture. Forgive our children. Forgive society. Forgive religion. Forgive ourselves. Forgive our bodies. Forgive ourselves for hating our bodies. Forgive ourselves for having hated others who look like us or who represented who we thought we would never want to be. We must forgive in order to move on. Forgiveness is really important because until we're able to forgive and operate from a platform of self-love, we're not going to be able to be free. And when we talk about liberating ourselves and tearing down the pillars of oppression, forgiveness is a tool that is necessary in order to move on. We have to acknowledge ableism. We have to acknowledge oppression, but do so with forgiveness, because forgiveness allows us to be productive. Forgiveness allows us to pick the best aspects of ourselves and use them as tools in order to keep growing. So please, forgive, 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 forgive. G is forgiving. Not forgiving as forgive, but give. Give. Give from what you can. Give what you can. Give when you can. Give because you can. Give because you should. Give because when you do, blessings multiply and return to you in abundance. Giving is not about giving when you are not in need or about giving from what you have the most. We live in a society where charity has become a dirty word. Charity has become something that we do when it's convenient to us, okay? And I say that in all honesty, because I get phone calls from Paralyzed Veterans of America or Texas something, and they say, would you have a donation box for us to pick up on your curb on Tuesday, May 7th or whatever? And you know what, almost all months, I say yes, because most of us actually do have something, that we want to get rid of, but I don't consider that like a donation that's really making much of a difference. You know why? Because I'm getting rid of things that I don't need. Giving is not about giving the things that you don't need. When we give something, we have given it. That means that we no longer have it, right? Giving means you give a piece of yourself, whatever that is, and you have given it to somebody else to you, somebody else to do whatever they want with. So when we give something, we need to give from the heart. We need to give because we can. Some time ago, I kind of like the story. Some time ago, somebody brought me a kitten, and I'm an animal lover. And I remember my partner at the time asked me, why Maria? Why another cat? Why you? And my answer simply was without hesitation, because if I have the means and the ability, then I have the responsibility to do something about it, okay? If not me, then who? If not you, then who? If not us, then who? Who will be there to do the part that you can? So give, not when you have so much of this that you just give it away, because that's not giving. That is not giving. Charity is not a dirty word. Giving is not about giving what you have the most, but giving even though you don't have much. And I've always kind of operated that way. I tend to simply give because it's my nature. And I don't stop and think about it. I don't stop and think, okay, I already have a cat. I already have 4 dogs. I already have a child. No. If somebody needs a place to stay and then they pass through that's just my nature. I'm not asking you to be the same as me, but I am asking you to take a look at yourself and recognize that you have the means and the ability, then you have the responsibility. And means doesn't mean that you're wealthy. Means simply means that you are capable, that you have what it takes to rescue that cat, to rescue that person, to feed that person who's hungry, to do your part. So give. Let's see. What else do I have? Yes, H. A bit of water. I'm so glad I asked for the water. Thank you, baby. H is for honoring each other's humanity. We must recognize and respect our worth as human beings. A worth that does not diminish or get eliminated when we become disabled, or when we are born poor, or when we are born brown, or when we are born female, etc., etc. When we envision collective liberation, we must recognize that our human worth does not have to be attached to a monetary value, to a career, or to a social status or level of physical, mental ability for our lives to be considered valuable. When we honor each other's humanity, we make it more difficult for the oppressor because it is harder for them to dehumanize us. Do you realize that the pillars of oppression are in part related to people's ability to dehumanize another group? You know, if us as disabled people are seen by the disabled world as being less human, then it becomes easier for them to throw us into institutions. It becomes easier for them to justify euthanizing us. It becomes easier for them to oppress us at any level and in any way, okay? So honoring each other's humanity is super important, because when we honor one another, when we recognize the humanity that is part of each of us, then we make it difficult for the oppressors to keep oppressing us. So H, remember H is for honoring our humanity. I is for intersectionality and interdependence versus independence and individuality. And I put it that way because we live in a world that absolutely and totally values independence and individuality, right? All, you know, society strives to be independent as defined by the normalization of independence, as defined by ableism, as defined by a culture that expects people to turn 18 and all of a sudden this thing clicks and you're 18, you move on with your life without taking into consideration a lot of other things. Independence and individuality somehow or another don't necessarily work the same for disabled people, you know? Intersectionality is about recognizing the various layers of ourselves and how such interact with one another and with the world. We all have various layers of self-identity, and we can be all of them at the same time, or some of them sometimes, or some are interchangeable. When we talk about intersectionality, we talk about how our personal crossroads are more like intertwined roots that connect to the tree of life each of one of us sustains through our existence. Interdependence means we are not only aware of each other's existence and value, but we also recognize our need for one another and our need to connect with the various aspects of who we are and the many petals that make the whole flower. We are connected to the unique, imperfect, gorgeous, sexy individuality of each of us in the universe because we are intersectionally, beautifully diverse. I'm going to repeat that part one more time. We are intersectionally, beautifully diverse. I like to believe that through our intersectional interdependence, we become instruments of love, instruments of change, instruments of advocacy, instruments of hope, instruments of shared awareness, instruments of creative force, instruments of joy, as we become part of the orchestra that plays the echo of our collective power. We need each other to survive. We must sustain each other because unless we do, the non-disabled world will throw us away. So remember that your intersectionality and your interdependence are perhaps the most important aspects of who you are, because they represent the whole you, as well as the individual aspects of who you are. J, I need to know how I'm doing on time. Yeah, I'm good. I say that, but I know I'm coming. Okay, I'll talk faster. J, join the movement. Recognize your responsibility in being part of this mural of activism. Your individual parts, your individual stories are what makes collective liberation possible to envision and embrace. Empowerment begins with the realization that we already have everything we need to make a difference, and then we choose to do so, right? Empowerment means that we already know we have what it takes to make a difference, and we choose to make a difference. We join the movement. We join the movement, and the movement is real. We are fighting for our lives. The war on disabled people has never been so much in our face as it is today. Who would have thought that almost 30 years after the ADA, we would be sitting here still fighting for our basic rights? But guess what? We are. And we can do this together. We are not alone. Join the movement. Join the movement. You're an important part of it. We need you. We cannot do this without you. We are an important, integral force of this movement. You belong here. We need you. Join the movement. K. K is for keep climbing. We have to keep climbing because sometimes we forget that we have been down for so long that we forget that we've been down here, and then we begin to climb, and the climb is not easy. We have to keep climbing. And quickly, I just want to say something about the climbing, which is a little story about a group of frog friends. Please tell me if you can't hear me because I can adjust the mic. This is a group of little frog friends. They're just hopping around in the forest doing what frogs do, right? And all of a sudden, one of the little frogs falls into a well. And she keeps hopping and hopping, trying to make it up. And her little friends at the top are cheering, like, you can do it, come on up, you can make it. And they just kept cheering. This went on for like a long time, right? And in frog time, that's probably like forever. But I don't know if frog time and dog time is the same, but you know. Okay, so anyway, the frog friends kept cheering and cheering. And then after a while, they gave up. They were like, oh, stop it, don't even try anymore. The little frog, you know, she kept jumping and jumping. And in one of those leaps, she made it. She made it to the top. And you know why she made it? She made it to the top because at first when she was jumping, she heard her friends cheering, right? So when she was stuck at the bottom and she kept trying to make it up and she couldn't learn a good job, she couldn't hear what the friends were saying. She couldn't hear the negative stuff that was being told to her. She couldn't hear, give up and die. Stop trying. Just roll over. You're dead. Stop. She did not hear that. She thought they were still cheering for her. She thought her friends were still cheering for her. Okay, so the lesson here is never give up. And also, we have to ignore the negative messages from others. We have to ignore the messages that tell us that we are not good enough. We have to ignore and be completely oblivious to the so many lies that we have been taught to force upon our lives. Okay, when we climb, let's not listen to the frogs that tell us, stop, die. No, don't stop. Keep climbing. Keep climbing. And when you climb, let's grab another frog with you that might be stuck down there. We have to support one another. And climbing doesn't mean you climb alone. We climb together. And if somebody falls, we get back down and pull our sisters back up, our brothers back up. That's what collective liberation is. All of us moving forward together, leaving nobody behind. Oops. Otra vez. Man, I'm good. Hopefully that didn't hurt anybody's ears. So K is for keep climbing. L is for language of love versus language of oppression. We have to embrace the language of love. I like to believe that love is so revolutionary. I always like to say that self-love automatically fights ableism because we expect to hate ourselves. Okay, so when we don't hate ourselves, when we love ourselves, when we are pouring love and acceptance and we are celebrating ourselves when the world is hating on us, that is the language of empowerment. You know, that is what keeps us strong. So language of love versus language of oppression. We all know what the language of love is, but do we know what the language of oppression is? I don't think that many of us recognize the language of oppression. That's why we do it to ourselves so much. You know, I'd be willing to bet that everybody in this room would have no problem giving me a list of 20 things they hate about themselves. But if I were to ask you to give me 3 things that you love about yourself, you'd probably sit there for 10 minutes and could probably think of only one. Why? Because we have been taught to only see the negative about us. The language of oppression puts down or diminishes, ridicules, focuses on failure rather than possibility, condemns mistakes rather than learning from them, stereotypes and generalizes. So that's kind of like in a nutshell, the language of oppression. That's the language that we need to avoid in the movement towards collective liberation, because our mural, the mural that we're painting, it's one of diversity and beauty and all the wonderful things that makes us who we are. So L is for language of love versus language of oppression. M is for meaningfulness. Every single one of us has a special meaning, a purpose that nobody else can fulfill. You have to find meaning and meaningfulness in the things that you do, in the things that you love. Find your passions, feed your passions, have meaning, find meaning, give meaning. Find what moves you, what shakes you, what makes you, your veins throb with passionate awareness of who you are. Have meaningfulness, because the movement without meaningfulness will mean nothing. So find that meaningfulness in your inner advocate. And narrate your story from a position of power. Share your story knowing that your scars, your pain, your differences are not a source of weakness, but a source of power from which you are able to draw strength and wisdom and advocacy. Narrate your story in whatever language you choose, in whatever color you choose, in whatever voice you project, as long as it's your own. Narrate your testimony of your journey and your battles and the wars you have won. Narrate your story, not calling yourself a victim, but a survivor, not a burden, but an asset and a blessing and a gift, because you are all that and more. All that and more. When you share your story, when you narrate your story, do so from a position of power. Do so knowing that you deserve to share your story. Do so knowing that you deserve to be here, that you are meant to be here, that your story has power, that your story is the one that allows us to envision the pillars of oppression coming down as we paint our murals of activism, just as they are, just as we are, beautiful, powerful, strong, capable, disabled. Yes, I said it, disabled and beautiful. And that was N, to narrate your story from a position of power. O is overcome ignorance, not your disability. I get sad when I hear people say that they strive to overcoming their disability, especially if their disability is permanent and irreversible. Because guess what? They're probably going to spend all their valuable time that they could use loving themselves, kind of like waiting for a change that's probably not going to happen. Overcoming ignorance and not our disability is very, very important to the movement of empowerment. How many times have we heard even people with disabilities refer to themselves of, in spite of my disability, or despite of, okay? Disability pride does not mean we should negate our pain and forget about our struggles. It is more about being okay living in our disabled bodies, knowing that we don't have to overcome being us. We don't have to justify our existence in a normative way. We don't have to explain ourselves in a non-disabled way. Disability justice is rooted in the belief that we are beautiful and strong and whole and capable and worthy, not in spite of our or despite of our differences, but because of them. Okay? Water. B, plant a seed. Empowerment begins with each of us. Each of us is a seed that has grown into this moment, this shared moment of empowerment and awareness of each other and our collective power. We are seeds of advocacy, seeds of love, seeds of activism, seeds of creativity. Can you think of a time in your childhood when you were really, really happy? Can you go back in your minds to that moment when you were really, really happy? Like maybe when you were about 10 years old? Was there something that somebody in your life did for you that made you feel really special, that brought magic that to this day prevails in your memory? I want you to take just a few seconds to go back in your mind to a childhood moment when you were really happy, okay? And then I want you to imagine this as a seed that I'm giving to you right now, a seed that when you leave this conference, you're gonna go back to your daily lives and you're gonna find a child who is the same age you were then when you had that happy memory, and you're gonna try your best to duplicate that magic in that child's life. That's my seed for you under Plant a Seed, okay? Q, question everything, okay? Q is for question everything. Question the medical model. Question the movement that forgot to include others like us. Question politics, question authority at every level, but especially so as it relates to the politics of your disabled lives, our disabled lives. Question everyone involved in your daily survival. Question those who you love, because in the name of love and without ill intention, ableism is propagated and passed on through the webs of our cultural experience. Yes, question everything. R is for resistance, resist. Resistance is part of survival, as we know. We resist oppression and all the ramifications of it. We resist ableism, racism, ageism, transphobia, homophobia, cultural oppression. We resist to the pillars of oppression that to this day exist. We resist because our survival depends on it. We resist because without resistance, probably none of us would be here. All of us disabled people have a shared history of oppression, and therefore we have a shared history of resistance. Not for a second think that this is new to us. We have been resisting all our lives, whether we recognize it or not. So my loves, keep resisting, keep resisting. S is for solidarity. Are thoughts and prayers enough? Is it enough to put sad little faces on our social media or to add a frame of solidarity to your selfie on Facebook? Are we doing enough? And what is solidarity? What does it feel? What does it mean when I say, I feel your pain? Do you really feel my pain? Do we truly feel each other's pain? And how do we offer true solidarity to one another? We have to find a way. We have to find a way to learn about each other's struggle and see it through the lens of love, through the lens of humanity, through the lens of compassion and mutual understanding. What piece of your personal puzzle are you moving to make a difference right now? People often make the mistake of thinking there's little or nothing they can do. They wash their hands off the responsibility of being part of true solidarity. So please, let's stop washing our hands, unless we're doing like a hand washing communal thing, like the washing of the feet. You know, I'm in for that. I'll wash your hands. T is for translating ourselves into empowerment. Why? Why do we have to translate ourselves into empowerment? Why? Because the world will always get it wrong. That's why. They will speak about us without us. They will spread messages about third-person versions of our stories. Therefore, we must constantly translate ourselves into empowerment, changing the message the world sees and hears and feels about us through us. For too long, our stories have been narrated through the voices of non-disabled lives and medical learned models of our shared experience as disabled people, whose brokenness is what makes us whole. When we translate ourselves into empowerment, we recognize and honor the very things others have been projecting as negative or less valuable, when we are the only ones living in our disabled bodies. So when we translate ourselves into empowerment, we remember that. We remember we are the only ones who speak the language of us, the language of our bodies. U is for unapologetical advocacy. We must be unapologetical in the way we fight for our rights. We have been apologizing for our needs for too damn long. We've been apologizing for our differences, for our rights, for our existence. Disabled people, and especially disabled Latinos and Latinas, have been apologizing for too long. We do not owe the world an apology for being who we are and needing what we need in order to exist. We do not owe the world inspiration. Our rights have never been special rights. So no more apologizing, unapologetical advocacy. These are my rights and I'm here to claim them, right? V is for vision. Vision is our ability to imagine, desire change, and take the necessary steps to make things happen. Vision alone is not enough. It must be fueled by action. It must be lit with the fire of our advocacy. Collective liberation requires vision, passionate vision, open-minded vision, compassionate vision, mountain-moving vision. Our vision of collective liberation is one that includes all of us. All of us. Water. W is for worthiness. Our worthiness is not attached to a non-disabled dream. Our worthiness comes from the net value of our humanity. Just the fact that we exist makes us tremendously worthy. And as such, we are also worthy of love, worthy of opportunity, worthy of expression, worthy of freedom, worthy of happiness, productivity, and everything else that you may desire. We are worthy and we have worth. Therefore, W is for worth. And then X, you know, the X, I had so much fun with the X because I've seen people do alphabets before, you know, and people cheat. People cheat and they put the X big and then they put an E in front of it and say expect or exchange or exact or X whatever. I didn't cheat. So in putting together this alphabet, I learned a new word. I don't even know I'm pronouncing it properly, but I swear it's in the dictionary. And if any of you academia people know it, please correct me if I'm mispronouncing it, but it's a beautiful word and it's Xenia. Xenia, okay, correct me, not whatever, but I've never heard that word before. And you know what it means? It means hospitality. It means being hospitable to others. And I thought, how fitting, how very fitting to find a word with X that would kind of like put a river around this whole thing that I've been talking about, right? I mean, reaching the X, I thought I was going to have to cheat and say, expect more, or whatever. And I didn't, yay! Y is for yearn more. Yearn for more. Always yearn for more, because wanting more is what ambition is. Yearn for more and demand more. Keep your hunger alive. Keep that yearning, that nagging that wants you to do more, to be more, to give more. That yearning is the voice of your inner advocate reminding you to do your part. Yearning is good. And then Z, I'll do the Z and then I'll close with a piece if that's okay. Z is for zooming in. We have to zoom in into each other's lives and really take a close look at one another. When we zoom in, we're able to see up close and personal the beauty and the pain and all the things that make all of us as we are, with all of our magnificent imperfections. And while the world will look at us and see us as broken pieces, when we zoom in, we see the whole picture, the whole beautiful, amazing magnificence of who we are in this amazing movement of collective liberation. We bring down those pillars of oppression and we become whole. Our mural of activism and collective liberation is one painted by all of us. And having said that, I would like to close with a piece, which I call my Crip Social Justice poem. I need water for that one. I'm afraid of asking where am I on time, so I'll just keep going. My Crip Social Justice poem. Crip social justice is like putting icing on the icing, because social justice is supposed to include everybody who's been oppressed, minorities all across the board, and all those who beg the good Lord for social change, because the chains that oppressed our rights are still there, just with a different name, a different flavor of bigotry. Crip social justice is having to reinvent the wheel, because otherwise people forget we can feel the weight of ignorance suffocating our truths, like Crip fake news, or like changing our stories to able-bodied happy endings that do not fit our bodies or a true representation of our disabled lives. Crip social justice is us having to declare war on ableism while being at war with our own bodies, because we've been doing it for so long that we have pretty much forgotten how it's done, when we don't have to fight for something, when we don't have to feel left out, ignored, forgotten, abandoned, left to die, desexualized, forced to invent able-bodied versions of ourselves in order to exist. Crip social justice is recognizing that we can manage our own lives from our crib beds, from our wheelchairs, from our scent-free sacred spaces, from our personal quiet places, and still be giving and capable and able to love ourselves and the world, even though the world doesn't always love us back. Crip social justice is learning to look back through the lens of forgiveness while knowing that time doesn't always heal everything. Crip social justice is the realization that we are still whole, although we have been labeled broken, incomplete, unworthy. Crip social justice is knowing we have what it takes to deliver ourselves from ignorance, the true evil we must eliminate, for it is the womb of all fears, the womb of all isms. Crip social justice is learning to say no, no more hiding our scars, no more trying to become something we're not. Crip social justice is saying no, we do not owe you inspiration. Our stories, like our bodies, belong to us. Our voices are the only ones with the right to sing our song, our Crip song of rebellion and collective liberation. Our Crip song of unapologetic crippleness, as we reclaim the word Crip as something beautiful and powerful and worthy of love. Crip social justice is pouring love over our painful history, but never forgetting that it happened, never negating the fact that we were able to rise above the walls of shame and oppression that condemned our differences to institutions, sentenced us to death, burned us at the stake for the sake of normality. Crip social justice is realizing we are still thrown in institutions, sentenced to death by invisibility, while our humanity burns away still for the sake of normality. Crip social justice is having to peel the layers of our own internalized ableism when we realize we have been oppressing each other by segregating ourselves in little groups like the blind with the blind, the rollers with the rollers, the deaf with the deaf, and on and on. And in doing so, we have been feeding the same monsters we have been trying to kill. Crip social justice is learning there are monsters to kill and knowing we don't have to do it alone because we are a movement, a living root, a force, a source of power. Crip social justice is knowing our power doesn't have to fit a non-disabled mold. We don't have to chase an able-bodied dream in order to fit in order to validate our humanity. Crip social justice is knowing we are adding icing to the icing, but doing it anyway because it's what we have to do to get to the damn cake in the first place, while others have their cake and eat it too. Crip social justice is learning to say, my body is not your apology. You don't have to help me look for a way out. Crip social justice is being able to say that without guilt. Crip social justice means understanding, embracing, acknowledging, embodying the various sections of our uniqueness as individual parts, able to recognize themselves as whole. Crip social justice is cripping our way through life, making the word crip a verb, more out of necessity than pride, more out of survival than love, because unless we conjugate our truths and exercise our rights, they will be sentenced to death along with our bodies. Crip social justice is unlearning the lies we've been forced to believe. It means we understand inclusion as it really is, with everybody and everybody, leaving nobody behind, unless that's what they choose to do. It means we respect that choice even if we don't agree with it. Crip social justice means unwrapping ourselves slowly but surely, knowing we're okay being ourselves, although it took us years to get there, in that space of self-acceptance that allows us to claim Crip pride, Crip power, Crip identity as a positive identity rather than a curse or the worst positive outcome of life's sick sense of humor. Crip social justice is being able to laugh at life's sense of humor, but not forgetting that our disabled bodies, our disabled lives are never a joke, never a mistake, never an unfortunate accident, a wrongful birth. We are never a punishment or a sin, never. We are simply meant to be. We come in peace. And although we do want a piece of the cake, we will bake our own cake and we do not need the icing. Our truths are no longer ashamed to be nude. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Did I call them a time too?
You're fine.
That's okay. Well, unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. Sorry. It's okay, because lunch is has already